Hey, hey, hey. Welcome back to Everything's Messy podcast, where we talk about life, wellness, mess, and everything in between. Today, I'm messy, no judgment. I am your host, Sarah, messy host. And today, I'm going to stir the pot a little bit. And I think part of it comes from the journey that I've been on. And a lot of times, I hate to admit it, but I'll have read something and thought I've done my research, and I go to purchase the supplement or purchase the product and think it's going to be life changing. And it really isn't. So let's be real for a minute, okay? The wellness world, the wellness space is booming. And somehow, a lot of people still feel like crap. Let's be honest. And it makes you wonder, if we have all of these technologies and supplements and wellness products, why are we still feeling like that? And I have to say, I feel good most of the time, but there are some times where I'm like, why am I not further in my journey? Why am I not much farther in where I want to be than where I am? And I've got my notes here, so bear with me. But it's like, let's talk about supplements just for a second. You've got to supplement your supplement, right? So I think I've talked about it before. When I really started getting into magnesium and learning that there are 7 different kinds of magnesium, but you can't just take magnesium by itself. And, you can't take D3 by itself, and you need to take them both together. And then when you take D3, you have to take K2 through 7, because that brings it out of where it's not supposed to be and puts it where it's supposed to be. But there's not a lot of people, I've spoken to many what would be experts or gurus about this topic, and they are not aware of that. And so they're continually saying, well, people just need to take magnesium. And that's true, but it can't just be taken by itself. So there's a lot of technical nuances, things that are happening. And it's like, why, if we have all of this new stuff, this big wellness space, people are completely getting excited about all of the wellness space. If we have this, why are we not better? Why are we not feeling better? Why aren't we doing better? And so that's what I want to talk about today. So let's go part 1. I'm going to break it down to parts, obviously. So the broken promise of modern wellness. All right. Somewhere along the way, wellness turned into performance. What do I mean by that? So it became about aesthetics. It became about the fridge packed with $14 protein bars, the daily greens, the protein powders, the curated morning routine with 3 different adaptogens, or none of them which you can pronounce, or at least I can't. And we're buying more than ever. The wellness space, the health space, it has just exploded with wealth. These products that everybody wants to get a hold of. And yeah, some of them are good, but some of them I feel are just saturating the space, and it's making it confusing for consumers to just figure out what they want to purchase or try. And none of it is cheap, right? So how come, if we're buying more than ever, and we're spending all of this money and we're trying to do the right thing, we're healing less than ever? We're not doing better. And I'm starting to wonder, is it like a psyche where we tell ourselves, okay, we're going to stick to this routine, we're going to stick to this supplement, and then somehow just the purchase of it, or just the act of writing down the routine, somehow we tell ourselves, okay, we're doing better, but we don't follow through, or we don't do the research on it, or after we purchase it, we're like, yeah, we don't really need it. And where do we get the information to show where we can exactly use exactly what we need and only purchase exactly what we need? How do we get there? Right? And no one is really talking about just the basics of wellness that you don't have to spend a lot of money on. For instance, and we've talked about it before, sleep. Right? You have to be intentional with your sleeping time, your sleeping space, and how you wind down. All of that needs to be intentional. And that's pretty much free, right? You want to make sure it's a very cold room, dimly lit or no light at all. Putting away your electronics and, that blue screen that's staring at you, you want to put that away. 2 hours minimum before your bedtime, going back to reading or just deep breathing or whatever those things are, that is relatively, other than maybe the light bulbs or, relaxation things that you might need, it's relatively cheap to accomplish. What about your nervous system? I, for a long time, and I'm getting better, but have suffered from a dysregulated nervous system. So how do we regulate that? Well, there's things like L-theanine and, the magnesium that we talked about, and just getting all of those things to just help us calm down. There's also, again, the breathing would help with the nervous system. There's somatic yoga, somatic exercises, all of those you can do. You can look on YouTube and get free videos and then, try and implement them yourselves. So again, these are very minimal costs, if you will, versus the next, protein or the next supplement or the next, these things that maybe we haven't done a lot of research on that somebody says, oh, you need to try this. And we're just putting more and more money out there. But what are we trying to heal? What are we really trying to accomplish? Right? So it 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 makes it difficult, and it makes it hard to stick with a wellness plan. It makes it hard to stick with a wellness routine. It makes it hard to even want to continue to be well and do well. And then if you're like me, you kind of get consumed with it. You kind of obsess about it. And it's wherever you are, it's whatever you think about. And then it starts to almost take away parts of your life, and it takes away the joy because you're constantly thinking about it. You're constantly having to decide in your head, well, this versus this, or I can't eat that, or I shouldn't eat that, or I can't have caffeine, or whatever it is. It's literally taking us out of the moment to enjoy and appreciate life. And I will say that one of the things you can add that would actually help with regulating nervous system and, sleep and things like that is just having that grateful mindset of being gratitude and, giving thanks and saying that out loud or saying it to you, writing it down. And that kind of changes our perspective. And these are, again, pretty much free things we can be doing. And so, I talk about this till I'm blue in the face. The other one that we can talk about is blood sugar. Even for those who are not diabetic, blood sugar plays a huge role, not only with your hormones, with your mood and what's happening. And that, again, is something that you could pretty much, try and regulate with what are you eating? Low carb, things like that. Do you need the $14 protein bar to accomplish that? No. But I don't know, is it the psyche? Does it make us feel better when we do that? Maybe. I don't typically subscribe to protein bars. Yes, they're quick on the go, but I have seen a lot of them that are, full of things that I don't want to put in my body. And at the end after I eat it, I'm still kind of hungry. So I'd rather just eat raw, full, food, whole food that is going to satiate me than think about the $14 I just spent on a protein bar that's not really going to give me what I want. So, okay. Let's move on to part 2, and let's talk about when wellness becomes pressure. It is, I know I have felt it. I have felt it from others. I have probably given it to others and not intentionally. But we feel like with all of these things swirling around, we have all this pressure to do the wellness stuff. And while it's important and we need to take care of ourselves and have that routine, and especially when it comes to nutrition and exercising, are we giving ourselves the pressure again and taking away the joy? And that kind of is counterproductive. Because it takes away what we need to be feeling wellness about. So, when you've got already a full-time job where you're taking care of others and now you're adding this wellness piece and it's overwhelming and it's confusing and you don't understand it and you've tried everything and you just feel like you're throwing all this money away, that's when we have to take a step back and just say, I think this is not serving me. I think this is not, giving me what I thought it was going to give. And we have to, my favorite word is pivot and shift into a better mind space, into a better place of our own thinking for what we're trying to accomplish. Well, wellness, whatever that is, we should be going about it differently if it's going to give us that much trouble. And, you know, burnout, I didn't believe this was told to me about 3 years ago when I started this journey. Burnout is real when it comes to wellness. You can be burnt out about trying to be well, about trying to be in that space and always putting the pressure on that you're not doing a good job and you're trying to heal and you're burnt out, like you're done. Maybe you're not going to make bad choices on purpose, but when it comes down to sitting down and just making a dinner for the family, man, if you're burnt out and it's just too much and you just want to make that spaghetti that night, we shouldn't be beating ourselves up and, you know, having these inner struggles and these inner arguments of what now. Is there better choices? Sure. But if it's taking away your joy, if you've been struggling with, I just so sick of learning and hearing about the wellness, then time out. Time out. Take that time, take that space. Again, it's like anything else that you're trying to do. You want to approach it with love and grace for yourself. And if it's not serving you, not only do you have to take a second look at what you might be trying to do, but maybe it is not the path for you at the moment, right? So, and before I go on to the next subject, let me just say, you don't have to do all the things. Remember, we are talking about one small daily habit that you just implement that will have compound effects, and that's what you need to focus on. And if it's just one thing, that's okay. Take it slow because we don't want you to get burned out. I don't want to be burned out. No, we don't want that feeling, that pressure, that space. We don't want that. Okay, so let's go to how about part 3 and what actually moved the needle for me? And I've always talked about this, but it's okay. I've had the heart attack. I have had type 1 diabetes since I was 15 years old. I've spent years battling, symptoms, chasing solutions. And guess what? It wasn't the fancy stuff necessarily that saved me. What do I mean by that? It was basics. It was first learning my boundaries, learning that it was okay to take care of myself and have self-care, even if that meant the kids didn't get me 24/7. And I had to learn that. And that seems very basic. And I know a lot of moms struggle with this, but I really had to retrain and learn. It's okay to take this boundary. It's okay to go do this for myself. I'm not a bad mom for wanting to do this. And that was really, really big. Okay. And that didn't cost me anything but time and grace given to myself. Okay. Let's talk again, blood sugar balance. When I was able to really recognize what was serving me with my blood sugar and learning the best times of day to eat, learning actual math for my bolus and my basal. We don't talk about this enough. I try to not get bogged down with the details because I want this show to be for everyone. But let me talk to type 1 diabetic and anybody struggling with diabetes. There is, first, we've talked about this. Carbs, obviously not burned off quickly, will turn to sugar and sugar turns to fat, right? We know this. We know that if we're going to ingest carbs, we have to offset that by taking insulin. But remember, we are not sugar or carbohydrate deficient, right? We are pancreas-induced controlling insulin deficient, if that makes sense. So when we talk about balancing that, we talk about what foods serve the best for that condition that will not have high spikes, that will not drop your sugar, and you'll be able to go about your day, hopefully with minimal thought about your diabetes. Okay. And so figuring out the foods, paying attention to the glycemic food index, that really helped me. And you can find it online and it just tells you basically the sugar content of fruits and vegetables and other things that you might eat. But I had to take it a step further. Protein and fat, believe it or not, will also spike your blood sugar. It will. And I think a lot of times people think, "Oh, I can have this steak and broccoli and whatever I'm eating, and it's not I won't have to worry about bolusing," and that's not entirely true. And this is when I, was able to really get down and deep and discover the, delayed bolus, right? You take a little bit now and you take a little bit 2 hours later when that fat's gonna set in and actually spike your blood sugar. And this gets very technical. This gets very, you have to be able to discern and figure out what your body's doing. But once I was able to get through that, the time that I spent with that, it's pretty easy now, and everybody's different. And of course, I'm not your doctor. I recommend you speak to your doctor about it. But just remember that carbs is not the only thing that can raise your blood sugar. Also exercise. It's the funniest thing. Most people don't realize that exercise, while it's good for you, can cause stress in your body. And that stress is read in your body as, cortisol or trauma or whatever it is, and that will spike your blood sugar. And so you just need to be paying attention to that, right? So going back to just learning the basics, breath work, we've talked about breath work. I always joke about I didn't know how to properly breathe. I was a very shallow breather. And so now I really take the time to have those deep belly breaths. And that is all helpful towards that step for wellness, right? And, I had to unlearn the idea that wellness had to be expensive, had to be trendy or perfect. Remember, we talk about this all the time. Wellness and whatever you're doing is not striving for perfection. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to honor our body, honor our journey, and we do not need the pressure of perfection anywhere near that. So, and once I stopped my inner dialogue and all this pressure and the things that I stopped fighting myself, stopped fighting for what I was trying to accomplish, but in a very conflict way, and I started listening for it, that kind of brought me the healing that I was looking for. Was I paying attention to my body? Oh, that headache. Did that mean more water? Did that mean blood sugar? And start really being in tune with my body and what it's telling me. Because I'm telling you, if you listen, your body will tell you what it needs. It really will. And then, I feel like a lot of these things I talk about a lot, I repeat, and it's really just to bring you guys the best information, the best content that I can. But it's also to let you know you're not the only one going through this. You're not the only one struggling. You're not the only one saying, why am I not getting this? Why is this not exactly, why am I not leveled up yet? And I think if we stop for a minute and we just say, okay, time out. Write down 3 things that you think are serving you right now, that are really serving you. And you put an explanation next to it as to go deeper as to how is it serving you. And then you realize those 3 things weren't that hard to accomplish, didn't cost a lot of money. So what's that 4th thing I can add? And you just sort of keep going like that. We talked about this before. What are your non-negotiables? My non-negotiable is exercise. Even if it's a 10-minute walk and I can't do anything else, I'm going to accomplish a 10-minute walk. It is non-negotiable. Food, I'm going to stick to as much low carb as I can. Now, carbohydrates equal fuel and energy, so we need some, but it's the kind of carbohydrate that you're getting. We've talked about this before. And then, if you have that burnout feeling, if you have that helpless feeling, first of all, you're not alone. But if it is just too much at that moment, stop. Stop, but make a promise to yourself, because remember, your body checks that. It feels if you're going to be true to yourself and keep that promise. But say to yourself, okay, I'm going to give you a week off or a month off or whatever it is right for you. But you are going to return. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you know exactly how you're going to implement it, and give yourself a deadline and a due date, and then forget about it. Don't obsess about it. Don't think about it. Don't say, oh my gosh, I have 3 weeks left. I have 14 days left. I have 7 days left, whatever it is. Just forget it and let your body rest and stop thinking and obsessing and, constantly checking what it is you have to do. Just stop. Just stop. And then when you come back to it, if you've done it the right way and you feel kind of a breath and you've got yourself collected and you can start again, that's when you say, okay, this time it's going to be different. And I'm going to do these 3 things. And I'm going to start with this. And here's my plan. And I'm going to drown out the noise of the other stuff. I'm going to drown out all of these ads that are coming at me, all these supplements that I need to take. I'm just going to take it one thing at a time, just one thing at a time, and then add to it. So where do we go from here? If you're, this is, I saw this on a meme, and so I want to use this in the podcast. But if you're sitting there with a supplement graveyard under your kitchen sink and still feeling like crap, you're not alone. I have spent hundreds of dollars on supplements that I thought, okay, this is going to be great. This is going to be worth it. And then kicking myself, not only did I not need to spend the money, this is crap. I don't need any of this stuff. But so if that's where you are, just stop. First of all, declutter, get rid of everything. That will also change your mindset. Just get rid of all the crap that you don't need. And, stop listening to all of the wellness noise, if you will. Get out of that and just, again, start over and start, ask yourself these 3 questions. Do I feel safe in my body? Because that will give you a tone of not only your dysregulated nervous system, that will give you a tone of where you need to start. So, do I feel safe in my own body? Am I actually rested? And I feel like this is a question that not a lot of people ask themselves. They're like, yeah, I slept, 5-6 hours. I'm good to go. But are you actually rested? Are you drinking the coffee to get your day started? And there's nothing against the coffee, but what if you didn't have the coffee? Could you get started? Ask yourself that. Do you feel rested? And then my favorite, is my nervous system shot? And you should be able to deduct that after the first 2 questions that you ask. And then if it is, forget the trends, forget the supplements, forget the latest invention of whatever they're telling you to do, and come back to you. Write it down. Make it simple. Focus on what you're trying to accomplish. Leave out the necessary, I need to lose 40 pounds. I need to do this. No, just strip it down and make it basic. That will help you bring back the joy that you're trying to accomplish, and, help yourself drown out that noise. And that's really what we're talking about. And that's what we want to accomplish. Because if you're just, constantly on social media, if you're constantly giving yourself that dopamine hit, if you're constantly trying to just, oh yeah, okay, what's the next one? What's the next one? Oh, I need this protein. I need this, strand of whatever. Oh, I need this probiotic. It can just get so much. Strip it down. Go outside. Be in nature. Ground. You know me. I talk about grounding all the time. So big for you. Take a cold shower. A lot of us can't afford a cold plunge or, something like that. If you can get into a cold bath, kudos to you. But if not, take a cold shower. Do an ice face bath. An ice face bath. Fill a bowl with water, put a bunch of ice in it, and then put your face in it. And this isn't torture. This just kind of snaps us and like, oh, okay, what's next? And I think, while it may not feel pleasant at the time, you might be surprised at the results. You really might be. So that is my spiel for today. Again, a lot of this we've talked about before. I hope some of it hit home because I know it is for me. If it didn't hit with you, maybe if you know a friend that's going through it, send it to a friend. Just let's keep talking about it. And trust me, I'm in the wellness space. I am not bashing the wellness space. I am trying to bring awareness to the noise and how it can be daunting and overwhelming. And, people get lost. They get lost in the noise. They get lost in and they can't discern about it anymore. So let's strip it back. Let's strip it down. Let's make it simple. Let's get you back on the track that you need to be. Let's make it better. And yeah, I hope this content brought you something. I know, I like to talk about these things that are weighing on me. I think it sort of came to my attention as I was sort of calculating um, when I first started and how much I was spending on these supplements that I just didn't need. And to this point as well, when you really are looking at the supplements, make sure um, it's not something that maybe you can get from just a whole food, right? If you need supplementation, that's what they're for, but just be careful and make sure that you're doing your research about it and that it's really needed. I know, I talk about a lot about the beef organs. That has really helped me not only with being anemic, but it has helped my thyroid function. And so I definitely need to supplement with that. But I didn't forget to make sure I'm eating the red meat that will go along with that. So if you're, not eating red meat and you're wanting to take these organ supplements, I'm not sure you'll have the same results. It just depends. And again, check out with your doctor. Make sure you're doing all of those things. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to put a poll out there. What was a wellness hack or something that you thought was going to be awesome that you tried and it turned out not to be? So let's do a poll on that. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. And I also hope that you have enjoyed all of the guests. I know we had Erin on last week. She's such a beautiful soul and everything that she's been through. So if you didn't listen to that, go back and listen to this episode. And then she was on originally in the beginning, episode 21, I believe, where she really gets into her story. So let me know what you think about that. And as always, keep it messy.